Hallo alle! In this lesson, we are going to be looking at Infinitivsätze, or infinitive clauses in English. Los geht's! Die Kunst zu leben besteht darin, zu lernen, im Regen zu tanzen, anstatt auf die Sonne zu warten. The art of living is learning to dance in the rain instead of waiting for the sun. There are multiple examples of infinitive clauses in this phrase. So take a look at it and see if you see something that maybe looks a little different than anything we've done in German before. So let's look at an overview of infinitive clauses. These things will all be explained throughout the lesson. The first thing to understand is that short sentences and clauses can be linked using infinitive clauses. These help to make your level of German sound more complex. These clauses are like clauses in English where to appears in front of a verb. However, they do work a little bit differently, so although it's an easy concept to grasp, it doesn't mirror English exactly and can be a little difficult to translate. An infinitive clause must have the same subject as the main clause, meaning the same person or thing needs to be doing both actions. Wichtig sind die Menschen, die dich lieben, wenn du vergisst, dich selbst zu lieben. So in this saying, the people who love you are important when you forget to love yourself, has another example of an infinitive clause. See if you can start seeing the pattern in these examples. Lerne dich unwohl zu fühlen und deine Welt wird sich ändern. Learn to feel uncomfortable and your world will change. Another example of an infinitive clause in this saying. So let's look at infinitive clauses. There are two types. The first is zu plus Infinitiv. Infinitive clauses have two clauses, a main clause and a dependent clause. The main clause introduces or states the subject of the sentence. There will be a conjugated verb in the main clause. The dependent clause contains the infinitive clause. Zu plus Infinitiv come at the end of the dependent clause, and there's no conjugated verb, hence the word infinitive or infinitive. It's very important to note that a comma separates the two clauses. This graphic will help you remember that. Idee, comma, idee. So the comma matters as it separates the two ideas. So you have an idea with a comma connecting it to another idea. Let's take a look at a concrete example of how this works. Ich brauche meinen Laptop, meine Hausaufgabe zu machen. So I need my laptop to do my homework. There are two verbs in this sentence. One is conjugated in the main clause. Ich brauche meinen Laptop. I need my laptop. And the second verb is in its infinitive with this zu construction, zu plus Infinitiv, meine Hausaufgabe zu machen. In English, that to and the infinitive come in different places in the sentence. In German, it will always come at the end of the dependent clause. So I need my laptop to do my homework becomes ich brauche meinen Laptop, meine Hausaufgabe zu machen. Second example, benutzt einen Rasierer, sich das Gesicht zu rasieren. So he uses a razor to shave his face. We have a main clause with a conjugated verb, benutzt einen Rasierer, and we conjugated benutzen, benutzt. And then we have a second clause, the dependent clause, with the zu plus Infinitiv, sich das Gesicht zu rasieren. Wir müssen Abenteuer erleben, herauszufinden, wer wir wirklich sind. We have to go on adventures to find out who we really are. This has an example of an infinitive clause, but it looks a little different. So on the previous examples, you saw zu plus Infinitiv. if you don't see that right away here, look a little deeper, because this is going to lead us into our next part of the lesson. With separable prefix verbs. So hopefully if you notice that herauszufinden is a separable prefix verb, and the zu came between the two parts. So when we use infinitive clauses with separable prefix verbs, zu will come between the separable prefix and the infinitive form of the verb. Here's an example. Fernzusehen. We're going to talk about that little guy in just a few minutes, but the separable prefix verb here is the important part. Fernzusehen. So Fernsehen is our verb. Fern is the separable prefix. They get separated now with zu in the middle, but it is still all written as one word. Fernzusehen. Here's a couple more examples of separable prefix verbs in infinitive clauses. So, ich brauche mein Handy, meinen Freund anzurufen. I need my cell phone to call my friend. Anrufen is a separable prefix verb, so that zu gets added between an and rufen and becomes anzurufen. Ein zweites Beispiel. Ich habe keine Zeit, mein Zimmer aufzuräumen. I don't have time to clean my room. Our verb is aufräumen. That separable prefix auf with zu between that and räumen creates our infinitive at the end of this phrasing. Jeden Tag gibt es etwas Schönes zu entdecken. Every day there is something beautiful to discover. The second type of infinitive clause that we're going to look at are called zu clauses. These clauses begin with and end with zu plus the infinitive form of the verb. So we're still using zu plus the infinitive form of the verb. It's just that each of these clauses begin with and they operate a little differently. Zu means in order to, and is generally used to explain why someone is doing something. A difference with this one than the just zu plus infinitive is that zu can come first in the sentence, which will affect the word order of the main clause. And we'll look at that and some examples in just a moment. And it's important to remember, just like with the first type of infinitive clauses, a comma separates the two clauses. So we're still going to have ide, comma, ide, with an idea separated from another idea with a comma. Using zu can take two standalone sentences and create a more complex sentence. For example, ich habe Seife gekauft, ich wasche meinen Hund. I bought soap, I wash my dog. These are two fairly simple standalone sentences. They get your point across. But to form a slightly more complex sentence and therefore show that you're a little bit better at German, you could do this. Ich habe Seife gekauft, meinen Hund zu waschen. I bought soap in order to wash my dog. In English, we often just say, I bought soap to wash my dog, but that zu is literally in order to. So we've taken two basic sentences and connected them with this zu infinitive clause to form one more complex sentence, and it shows a higher ability level to people. As I just mentioned, the first type of infinitive clause cannot come first in the sentence. You have to start with a main clause and then the dependent clause. Zu clauses can come first in the sentence. If this happens, you are going to use the inverted word order in the main clause. This means the conjugated verb will come directly after the comma. Let's look at what that looks like. Meinen Hund zu waschen, habe ich Seife gekauft. This is the exact same sentence, just putting the zu clause at the beginning. In order to wash my dog, I bought soap. We have a clause at the beginning, and in the second, our main clause, we have to invert our subject and our verb. So first position is that first clause. Our verb is always in second position. So meinen Hund zu waschen, habe ich Seife gekauft. A second example, meine Hausaufgabe zu machen, brauche ich mein Buch. In order to do my homework, I need my book. We could reverse this and say, ich brauche mein Buch, meine Hausaufgabe zu machen. I need my book in order to do my homework. Exact same sentence, but the zu clause can come either first or second. The important part to note is if it comes first, we're going to have this verb subject switch, the inverted word order, or I sometimes just call it the flip-flop word order. We're going to flip-flop our subject and our verb in the second clause. When dealing with separable prefix verbs with the zu, it works exactly the same way as in the previous set of infinitive clauses, which is zu plus infinitive. The zu is going to come between the separable prefix and the infinitive form of the verb. So that fernzusehen, in an example sentence, ich gehe ins Wohnzimmer, fernzusehen. I go in the living room in order to watch TV. And we could reverse this, fernzusehen, gehe ich ins Wohnzimmer. So in order to watch television, I go into the living room. And that is about it. It's actually a fairly straightforward grammar concept that most people pick up on pretty quickly. We don't have to conjugate verbs, so we mainly have to remember that we're going to have zu plus an infinitive at the end of a second clause. And these start to help you make fancier, more complex sentences as you move forward with your German. Okay, please email me or come to my office hours if you have any questions about this lesson. Tschüss, bis zum nächsten Mal.
Und tschüss von Frau's Katzen und Rodian. Sagt tschüss alle. Tschüss, tschüss.